example, in the geofencing library, is to have your application woken up when a user enters or leaves a specific area. So the scenario we've all read about, for example, is the advertising scenario, where a user signs up for alerts whenever they're near a place where there's a coupon. That's something that's very complicated to actually implement on the location side, although a location and geofence library like this one makes it very easy. That's one scenario. Another scenario is just enabling the kinds of tools that you, the kinds of experiences that you can't get today, which actually may even be cost savings more than revenue generating. For example, a roadside assistance application which says, typically when a user calls in and says, hey, my car just broke down, come get me, but they don't know where they are. If you can remotely locate that device, you save a whole lot of money wasting time trying to locate them. So there are scenarios both on the monetization side as well as on the cost savings side. And then my favorite, which I think is a fun one, for anybody who likes gambling in Las Vegas, we're working with a scenario where a sportsbook is going to enable betting by phone, which is a scenario that's illegal today because there's no way to prove where that user is when they're trying to make the bet. So that's why gambling on the internet or gambling by phone is illegal. If you can locate that user, for example, sort of a validation point that they're actually legally in the state of Nevada and they can place that bet, well, there's a whole lot of money there for monetization. So there are really all kinds of scenarios when you're going to bake location features into your application in a way that you may not have thought of.
Makes sense. I'm not sure if it's as relevant for you. I mean, I think you make money by billing. Is probably
that's right, yeah. I can condone gambling.
Good. So you sit on top of, first of all, are there any questions from the audience? I don't want to hog it all, but I'll keep going unless I see a hand.
Actually, I'll take an informal poll in the spirit of the question, Jonathan, in the spirit of Mario's informal polls. How many people here sell to consumers on the internet, sell product solutions to the consumer on the internet? Okay. How many people, in terms of payments, especially mobile payments, how many people have purchased something on the internet and at some point, because it was a credit card option, just said, you know what, it's too much of a hassle, let me shy away? I'm sure all of us have done that. I think it's about 90%. So the one thing I will say about mobile payments is the conversion factor that's very, very attractive, especially for folks that are selling to the end consumer on the internet. Conversion factors, we've experienced are as high as 50% versus, I think, 5 to 6% for some credit cards, all depending. So
interesting. Thanks. So question?
Yeah, you've had to chip away the carrier's cut in the deal. Have you been able to chip away their approvals?
Their approvals for what merchants we use?
Yeah, what content is sold through your system?
Yeah, so great question, by the way. And just to give you some background, it depends on the carrier, but for some content, especially on-deck content, it represented anywhere from $200 million in revenue, and in some cases $500 million, almost $500 million in revenue for on-deck. Because of the problems that the attorney generals in Florida and other states had caused them because of misbillings or parents suing because kids were buying something, I think the total liabilities came out to somewhere between $25–30 million versus the $200 to $500 million in revenue. They almost dropped the entire on-deck sales, that whole PSMS system, because of the hassle and the branding image that they had. So yes, I'm sure the carriers are not going to want to do pornography, gambling, or anything like that on their, on some sort of payment mechanism that's associated with them. But in terms of digital goods and then opening up beyond that, in Korea, for example, we're doing 20% non-digital goods. You're talking about music, you're talking about dating sites, you're talking about books, tickets, etc. I do see the carriers evolving. In fact, that's the attraction. I don't think the carriers just want to remain in digital goods and gaming sites. It's much broader. But I'm sure they'll stay away from the controversial.
Great. So sitting above and really alongside your code with the developer's code that you're supporting, what sort of insights have you got in terms of behavior, spend, attrition, conversion, things like that? Since you're really this is probably more relevant for John and for Scott. Are there certain learnings that developers can pick up, that you've trends you've seen over time?
Yeah, the one that always surprises us is how much international traffic will be generated when someone thinks that it's going to be entirely US based. So that one comes up again and again as one of the simplest and biggest ones. The other thing I would say that with analytics, part of the challenge is you just get a lot of data. And so most people who are developers are not data analysts. And so taking the data from just the raw feed to the insights is still a challenge that I think all the analytics companies have. How to make the data really easy to interpret and actionable right out of the gate with the reports. And that's something we're trying to do by making the dashboard simpler and right as you open up and get your first screen, understanding all of that as you go through, because what we do find, one of the big challenges is just data overload when you start collecting with all that. And I think we need to do a better job of teasing the insights out at an aggregate level and also making it very apparent to the developers what the insights are.
Thanks. Scott, do you find things, is there a certain period of time when it's best to convert people from trial to paid, things like that?
I think it's really just keeping the users engaged with the app. I mean, I hate to keep being sort of the drum about engagement, but that's a big one. And continuously iterating on their apps. Some folks will just let it sit, which is like the worst thing that you can do, because your customers are giving you constant feedback. We see it too. And it's one thing to get them in, over and over again, but you want to be able to, understand some of the analytics pieces of it. What do push notifications, getting the user to open the app, what does that drive? Can you get them into transactions? Can you get them to spread the word about your app to their friends? So there's lots of different things, but no real clear themes have sort of emerged yet. So.
Okay. Right. So you've all worked with a number of application developers. So is there certain advice or tips you can give developers in terms of how best to work with the carriers or with the platforms or with the handset manufacturers to ensure a better adoption, better placement, just better relations overall?
Yeah, I think the first thing the biggest thing for app developers is, we'll get folks call and ship a product first before you start talking about how you're going to have 100 million users. I mean, I'm not knocking users at all or customers, but so many people have these great ideas for apps, and I'm sure everybody probably on the panel has received a phone call from somebody saying, "Oh my gosh, I have this great idea." And I'm like, "Oh, well, good, go ship it." But it's more funny than anything else. But yeah,
That makes sense.
I mean, I hope not to offend anybody in the room, but if you can avoid dealing with the carriers, that's I mean, just to state the obvious, it's easier to do it that way. And that was one of our mantras from the outset, was we wanted to make it easier for developers to launch. And all of the tools we've designed, whether it's SDKs for smartphone devices or web services, have been to try to sort of lubricate the launch so you don't have to deal with the carriers. We take care of all that for you. Because it's not, I mean, we've been in the business for longer than I sort of care to talk about it.
Well, so the carrier bugaboo has been, in some respects, been replaced by Apple, and then along comes Android and Froyo. It's supposed to be, now that's the easy way to develop. Is that the sort of the mindset that you're getting as well?
Well, we've had success both with iPhone and Android for all the flack Apple gets, and they've definitely made some moves which we could spend all night talking about. They do approve most of the applications, and we have folks building with the SDK right now who I have no doubt will launch really quickly. So I think they have a bit of a bad rap there. So I think jump in and develop. They certainly made it a lot easier to launch than it was back in the sort of carrier days.
Great. Just raise your hand if you have a question, or just call out. Okay, so again, sitting where you sit, what sort of things are you really sort of excited about in terms of next trends? I mean, is Android overplayed, or is this really going to be an opportunity for developers to come out to really come out with more rapid iteration, less barriers? That's just one example. What sort of things are really getting you excited that you're seeing coming through your doors? Like, that's a great trend. I'd like to see more apps like that.
I think the Android's going to be a juggernaut. I mean, I think when people look out, 18, 24 months from now, the Apple experience is great. It's a great device. I have one. I'll be in line on Thursday to get the 4. But the reality is, Android's good enough, and they're going to ship a boatload of devices. Apple just won't be able to ship 100 million devices in a year. They're having a hard time just shipping this new device. The other one that's my favorite sort of anecdote about Android is I was actually at a bar and there were two bartenders there and they had